Welcome to the 12-Step Recovery Evolution podcast. Visit recoveryevolution.co.uk for more episodes, helpful resources and links to our social media. Also visit the site for information on how you can attend a future Zoom session or workshop live. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's really nice to be on this meeting and being able to share to, the East Coast recovery has been a big part of my life. And, I give glory to God, who's got the ultimate authority, but I know God works through people, and a lot of people that worked at East Coast recovery, and in that environment, it gave me a safe place to recover in, and also to learn a lot of life skills, which I never had. And it gave me a place where I can learn how to work in a professional environment and gain some really, really cool qualifications that I never had, and learn how to work in a high pressured environment. I just want to give my gratitude and be thankful to East Coast Recovery for everything they've done in my life as well. When I look at Amends, Lester said about yesterday to share on creative amends. I kind of can look back at my past, and that doesn't faze me, because my past was horrific, and the amount of debris that I'd left, it kind of I think if I could think of a cluster bomb going off, that probably wouldn't mount up to the amount of carnage that I really caused, with my family, with society, financial amends, with the local authorities. I think it's important to say a brief outline of what I was like. I was just a progressive, obsessed drug addict that loved taking heroin and crack. I loved diazepam, and I just loved ease and comfort. That's my truth. And the experiences that I gained from using was that I was just a chronic thief, and I was just always bouncing in and out of prisons. And amongst that, I had just loads and loads and loads of broken relationships. And the consequences were that I've just failed as a father. I brought 2 kids into the world that I was just an absolute wretch, that I never cared for them the way I should have. I never supported them and loved them and nurtured them the way I should have. They were very young, literally teeny bots. I'm talking like babies, when I was in the trenches, in the using and in the madness. And I failed as a son to my mum, as a brother to my brothers, and I was just like a leech. I can only describe my using. I just leeched on everything. I just sucked and drained the life out of everyone, both financially, emotionally, and mentally. And I never knew how much carnage I really caused. I wasn't awake to the pain that I caused to my immediate family until I got through onto the amends process. I just wasn't awake, wasn't conscious to it. And ultimately, after 16, 17 years of chronic drug abuse, I went to prison for the last time in 2014 in September. And I ended up sort of having a breakdown, so to speak. I can only say it wasn't just a mental breakdown, it was like a spiritual thing, actually. And my soul was snapped, it was dead. And I can just remember this light shining through this window in Pentonville prison. And I was on this detox wing, and I was just about to go out and get this horrific, horrible juice called methadone. And this sun shone through, and it came onto the mirror and reflected to my face, and I just looked absolutely like I was dying. And it was like that moment, I can remember I just said a silent prayer, like, if there's a God, please help me. And I went through a process of getting transferred to another jail, and there I met a lovely lady called Janet Gamble, who I'll talk about later. Anyway, she got me some funding. I ended up going into Rehab, into East Coast Recovery. And obviously, I learned what I suffered from. I got diagnosed pretty rapidly. the thing I love about the steps is that they can be worked fearless and thorough from the very start. And I was living on a life and death errand, so I love the fact that these steps can be worked quickly and thoroughly. And back then, I realised now that I was still seeking relief. You know, I didn't know that I could get release. I thought that there's something that's going to take this pain away. There's something that can alleviate this shame, this guilt, this remorse that I was feeling. And I just thought there was this magic pill. And I kind of like, you know, I can remember saying to a few support workers that worked there when I was going through my intensive treatment, they were just like, Ricky, don't jump off before the miracle happens, you know, and you're not going to be feeling great all the time. And they kind of done this weighing scale, and they said, if you put yourself on a weighing scale with all the drugs you've used and all the carnage you've caused, and you look at how many weeks you've been in recovery, do you really think you're going to be feeling all right? And I just go, nah. And that kind of really helped me, that simple little things like that, analogies. You know, and I started to work these steps, and I came on to the step 4, and I started to digest, you know, these large chunks of truth about myself. And I love this. I love the step 4 because it gave me it was like a platform that I could finally start to understand where I've gone wrong, you know, and see my part, and I could kind of look at it from another angle. And in the early days, I can remember how sick I was to be resentful towards my mum, you know, and my dad that had gone, and I was so angry, and I didn't really know where the anger was coming from. I couldn't work out the root of it, and it all came from self-centeredness, if I'm honest. And you know, and I did get brought, you know, I had some stuff happen as a child that you know, I shouldn't really have to go through, but today, you know, I've been able to look at that stuff as well, and realise that my mum did her absolute best, you know, for her 3 boys when my mum and dad split up, you know, and going through a process, which I'll talk about in a minute, that my mum's been able to really be honest with me about, you know, about her past when she was a child. And it just got me to really, really, really realise that, you know, all our parents and people that are before us, you know, unless there's an analogy in the one shoe, and just understanding that they've gone through some stuff as kids, you know, and they weren't perfect and they had issues, you know, so that kind of like softened my heart, and but being awake to my own issues as well. So I started to go through the steps 5, 6, and 7, and I went on and I came onto these amends. And I really like it in the big book. It says that our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And that's been my experience since like talking like from the 4th month that I came across that sentence till today. I try and live my life on that motive. And in the book it says that there's a long period of reconstruction ahead. And that just makes absolute sense to me. And I get that today because there's still reconstruction happening now, you know, rebuilding relationships. So, you know, when I came onto my amends, and I started to make amends to my mum, my first amends to my mum was just absolutely horrendous. It was selfish, you know, she bought me a phone. It was all about money. It was so selfish. And, but again, I was just so, I think it was like comes from a bit of enabling, if I'm honest. My mum didn't really understand why she behaved the way she did with me. And I think like this relationship now has just so changed dramatically. But back then it was sort of like it was unhealthy, you know. Mine and my mum's relationship was unhealthy, and I needed to look at that, and I did. And so when I started to make amends to my mum, after a period of time, I woke up that this amends wasn't really going the way I wanted it to. So I worked with a guy that, as you know, who's like who runs the Rehab, and he really helped me with it. And I started to talk to my mum, and it went along the lines of this: that a mumbling of saying sorry, you know, that doesn't cut it. You know, mumbling and saying sorry won't fill the bill. It won't. And I think, like I said to my mum, I can remember it clear as day. I was in the kitchen. I said, "Mum, look," I said, "now I'm awake." I said, "I really, really, really regret everything that I've done." that I've done. I said, and is there anything that I can do to put it right? And even though I didn't have no money, and even though it wasn't about that really, it was just that recognition that I know I've been an absolute wretch, and I want to put it right. And my mum also turned around to me and said that we talk about how important it is to know of what I put my mum through, and that was really hard to listen to. You know, I put my mum through absolute misery. She was in and out of the police station from the age of 14 up to about 26. She was bailing me out of courts. She was always going to Gray's Magistrates Court in Basildon in Essex. She used to bring me up food and cigarettes. She actually was honest with me and said she ended up on depression tablets because of my behaviour. The police were always on the phone. The door was always being booted in with police. And I really had to hear that stuff, you know. And before this meeting today, I was actually had a little tear, you know. I was sitting still, and I'm so grateful for this process of recovery, because it just is so far removed, all of that stuff. My mum's got so much peace today as a result of my recovery, but our relationship so beautiful today. You know, mine and my mum, we have so much honest conversations, and she really makes me laugh, and I really make her laugh. And her partner, Dean, who has been a big part of my recovery and in addiction, you know, he's witnessed my return to health, and he never trusted me, you know. That's obvious, isn't it? You know, I used to turn up there, and he'd be checking his drawers, he'd be checking his drink bottles to see if anything's gone down, because that's what I used to do. I used to take the drink, and I think, like, after a period of time, and I'm talking like a few years, I'm not talking a few months, his heart started to soften around me, you know. And I'd say definitely the last year or so, the conversations that me and him have are so adult and mature, which is a miracle, it's a gift. And he can look me in the eye, and I can look him in the eye, and we have a laugh, we share our faith, you know. He's very supportive, you know, we phone each other a little bit. I take my kids around there, and he loves my kids, and it's just really supportive, and that's a miracle as well, because in the past he never would have been supportive of me. So basically, when I started to make these amends, the first lot of amends with my mum and that, it led me into a position of that I changed them, because, you know, I kind of woke up to the real way how to do creative amends, and that was just my process I had to go through. And when I started making amends with my kids, those were really, really, really difficult, and rightly so. You know, I wanted to see my kids, the selfish Ricky, I wanted ease and comfort. I wanted my kids to make me feel better. I wanted them to alleviate my shame and guilt, and I wanted a cuddle, you know, and that's really, really, really immature. So again, I had to wake up to the fact that it's in God's time, not in my time, and I needed to put a lot of action in, you know. And thankfully, my kids were still very young. They was only coming up for 2 and 3. And mine and my ex-partner, we've had our issues as well. And again, you know, I try and be of maximum service to her as well. And with my kids, it was very slowly. And I remember taking them to the zoo on my first time I ever see them, and just really wanting to, like, tell them that I'm their dad. And again, you know, that's really selfish, because I haven't earned that position. You know, I lost that position because of how messed up I was on drugs. So, you know, that process took me a while to be able to be in a position where my ex then one day said, you know, that, by the way, that is your dad. And then I was able to pick him up. And I can remember it, the first time I picked him up, I started driving. I passed my driving test after 32 years. And yeah, and that was a miracle as well. And I picked him up, you know, and I started rebuilding this relationship with him. And it was like touch and go. And I wanted to really control them and try and do that stuff, you know. And kids just want to be kids. I realise that now. You just have to let them be kids. And, you know, watching my son and my daughter grow, like, I'm in a position today where with my son, I can sit him down and we have really, really like healthy discussions. Like, I'll talk to him about his behaviour, something that never happened to me as a kid. So I want to be able to give that to my son. And with this 12-step program, I'm able to be able to like understand where he's coming from. And my boy gets so frustrated and he can get really angry. So it's been able to like administer to him and sit with him and ask him, you know, Sonny, what's going on? Are you okay? How are you feeling? What's going on in your mind? And then me and him talk to each other now like that, and it's amazing. And you know, with my daughter as well, being able to support her. You know, we take them swimming when they come up here. We take them on holidays. And these aren't things to make me sound wonderful. These are things that a dad should be doing. You know, and me driving all the way to Essex is part of like being a dad. You know, I work all week. I'm feeling really, really knackered, but I get on the motorway and I get my kids because it's the right thing to do. And I know what it's like losing your dad. I was about 11, 12 when my mum and dad split. I had no father in my life. I had no one to look up to. And I don't want my son or my daughter experiencing that. And obviously, you know, I live out of the area, so I live about 100 miles away from them on a 2-hour drive. So I try my utmost best to see them on school holidays and pick them up, have them over Christmas. I've just had them for 9 days a little while ago, which was amazing. Just lovely little things like I was talking to Celeste about yesterday, that my daughter was feeding a squirrel with her hand in Alton Broad. And just moments like that, you know, that there's nothing more simple than taking your kids to a park, feeding the ducks, letting them run around. Me and my partner Louise was playing like run-outs with them and like having little races up to a tree and back, just things like that. It's beautiful. So, you know, today, you know, these amends, I think that's where like your recovery comes to life, and I think that's where the promises come in for sure. And with my other family members, you know, my brother Tommy, he's an addict in recovery. He's still on Subutex. I'm trying to like hook him in. You know, he's praying and he's meditating. He's still got these little issues going along, but in God's time, he'll come in. You know, I've managed to restore a relationship with my brother. So there's been a lot of restoration in my family. One of this amends I'll talk about now. This is amazing. This amends. I was in the rehab at the time, and I had a warrant out for my arrest, and it was for I basically got in a safe in Colchester, and when I was in my using, and took some money out of it and a laptop, and ended up at the train station, got chased by helicopters, and all this madness happened. I was absolutely nuts, by the way, and I got nicked for it, and me being me was dishonest in interview and managed to swerve my way out of it because they couldn't find the laptop because I chucked it, and I went to prison for another sentence. Anyway, when I was in the rehab, the police come up to the rehab and wanted to arrest me for it. My key worker said, Ricky, it's really important that you get honest about this. You know, this is where you get separated from the men from the boy club, you know. And I thought, I really do, you know, I need to be honest. And I'm really grateful for this amends. I went to the old bill station and told them, yeah, you know, that was me. I did do that. But I really regret all the carnage that I've caused in this area, you know. And I actually give the copper a hug and kissed her. And that, to me, I've never done that in my life, you know. And I ended up going to court for it. And I was on about 4 suspended sentences. This is, you know, how mental I was. And I thought I was going to go to prison whilst I was in rehab. But thankfully, I trusted the process and I've had faith in God. And the judge didn't send me to prison. You know, and through that being honest and clearing up that part of the amends, God looked after me. You know, he's took me to bigger things, better things. You know, Janet Gamble, this woman that was in the prison that I was in, who got me into ECR. When I came out of ECR, I was trying to find her everywhere because I wanted to write this amends letter and say, you know, thank you for taking your time and energy that you put into me to get me into rehab. But unfortunately, I couldn't find her. And then one day, I see this name come up on Facebook, and it said Janet Gamble had as a friend, and I thought that can't be her, surely. and I added her name, and I private messaged her, and I said, look, I'm not being a bit weird. I said, but did you used to work in a certain prison? And I said the prison's name. I said, my name's Ricky. I think you got me into a rehab. And within about an hour, she messaged back, she went, oh, wow, hello, Ricky. And I couldn't believe it was her. So that was really amazing, being able to thank her and share my little story of what's happened and what happened, what it's like, what's, you know, where I'm at today. You know, also like these living amends that I think a lot of people don't talk about them. You know, no one wants to hear about your using. You know, no one wants to hear about that stuff. What they want to hear about, what about your kids? What about your financial amends? You know, what about the carnage you caused in your community? You know, when are you going to start paying taxes? When are you going to start working and giving back? You're a taker. You know, and that kind of was drummed into me. So I became fully self-supporting after a period of time and a process that didn't happen quickly, by the way. And, you know, and I began to contribute into life again and became responsible and accountable. And I've done a lot of growing up. You know, I'm 5 years abstinent in about 2 weeks. And the transformation, I can own it. You know, it's a miracle. God's absolutely resurrected me, you know, and it is all glory to him. You know, I've done a personal amends to myself. I stopped smoking after years of smoking crack and heroin. You know, I really, really harmed myself, you know, my health. So, you know, it's really important to just have a complete lifestyle change. And God's just healed me from that, you know. He took that obsession to smoke away from me. I hadn't thought about it. I ended up having a lump in my throat. I ended up looking like I had a tangerine growing in my neck at one point. And that's another story. But you know, that was removed. You know, and just exercising, eating really healthily. I think like a part of my amends has always been was important early doors to do volunteering work. I volunteered at East Coast Recovery for a while, giving back, you know, doing book studies, running conventions. I love being a part of CA. I love helping people. I love the recovery circuit and the journey. Being able to like be an active member of a local church that I go to, which is amazing. I take the kids there now. Also, like, I got in a relationship quite early doors, and I was about 10 and a half months sober and clean. And by the way, my mind was still really corrupted, and I probably shouldn't have got on it that early, but I did. I took the plunge and put my foot in the water. But God's been really good, you know, with my relationship with Louise. And it has been hard. It ain't easy being in a relationship, especially in recovery. And she'll say the same as well. But, you know, we've been moulded together. And we really work on our stuff. We're both really active in the fellowship. And I'd say that where she helps a lot of people, I help people. That's our insurance policy, you know, with God. You know, we both share the same faith. Basically, a year ago, in about a week's time, she was baptised, and I asked her to marry me. And that was really, I think for me, that was like a big part of me growing up as well, fully committing to her, because I kind of was, like, if I'm honest, just like on the fence. And that's just where my head can just be so double-minded. But I realised it was that God either is or he isn't. He's everything or he's nothing. So, you know, and as I say, you know, it ain't easy relationships. But we do like with this like inventory stuff sometimes. She'll write down all the things that she doesn't, that are pissing her off, basically. And we'll share that stuff, you know, and that can feel quite awkward. But we do it because it's an important process. And I want to be, you know, I want to be the right sort of man for her, you know. I don't want to be a wretch and selfish and not sort of awake to if I'm pissing her off. So that's really important as well. And I think, like, sort of, for me, the amends as well, with everything in general, is just continuing in this journey, you know. And just continuing in this journey, and continuing with my amends, you know, doing the right thing. And I don't know what else to say, really. I'm just going to say this, that I believe God's hand has been in completely every part of my life. He's been in everything, and I can't deny it, you know. Jesus set me free about 5 years ago, and I have to say his name out loud, because he has, you know, and I cry my eyes out when I think about that stuff. You know, he really has rocketed me in my life. And I like this little verse. It says, "He's the potter and we're the clay." And I'll leave it there. Thank you.